Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the Sefer Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes. We are about to study chapter 3 together, that is Perek Gimel. The starting verse of chapter 3 is one of the more famous verses of the entire Bible, and I'll read it in a moment. But before we do that, I would like to just remind us of some of the ideas that the writer of Ecclesiastes, King Solomon, gave us and taught to us in chapter 2. Basically, in chapter 2, Solomon touched on the idea, Solomon or whoever the writer was, depending on the discussion we've had in previous podcasts. He was touching on the idea that we cannot fully understand some of the existential questions of the time, like when I act so and so, what will be the result in the future, right? Why is it that sometimes I work really hard but don't achieve what I'm looking for, and why is it that sometimes people can work really hard and then never enjoy the fruits of their labor, and someone else who didn't work really hard does get to enjoy the fruits of their labor? Just a general understanding that a realization that we don't always see the results. So it's very hard for us to think and live our lives as if we're working towards the future. You know, we cannot change nature. Nature continues as the way nature goes, and many times things happen that we cannot control. In fact, all that happens we cannot control, and so on. So because of this, Solomon advised us, Shlomo HaMelech advised us, the writer of Kohelet advised us to do the right thing and enjoy the moment. Enjoy the pleasures of the moment, enjoy the challenges of the moment, rise to those challenges, do the right thing at the time that it is occurring, not because of some future thing that we cannot understand, that we cannot explain, but rather because of now, because this particular time. Because he taught us that lesson in chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 3 makes a lot of sense. Because what do we experience in the now, in the present, in the moment? The present moment has a lot of different types of experiences. And those experiences, Solomon is going to teach us, Kohelet is going to teach us that we need to live in and experience those moments for what they are and not try to make them into something that they're not. Because lakol zeman, for everything there is a time, ve'es, and a season. L'chol chayfetz, for every chayfetz usually means an object, for everything, for every noun, every experience, tachat hashamayim, that occurs under the heavens. Tachat hashamayim, is the term that Kohelet has been using for anything that occurs within the world of our experience, the world that we live in. The things that are beneath the heavens, the things that we can see, feel, touch, and experience. So everything has a time and a season, right? Everything. So, and at that moment, we should experience what that moment has to offer us. Sometimes good, and unfortunately, sometimes bad. Because verse 2, 8 laledet, there's times to give birth, 8 lamut, and there's times for death. In other words, there's time to be happy and celebrate new life, and there's time to be sad and mourn lost life. 8 lata'at, there is time to plant. Sometimes we plant something new and we look towards a future of a beautiful tree or plant that we're growing. 8 la'kornatu, and sometimes we need to take a beautiful tree and uproot it, whether it's to use it for building material or to clear the way for something else we're trying to achieve. 8 laharog, sometimes one must kill. It's sad and difficult, but when one is confronted with a terrible situation, an enemy, a war of some sort, 8 lirpo, but then there's other times when we should heal, when we need to spend our efforts right now, and the appropriate thing to do is to heal someone else, 8 lifrots, or ourselves for that matter. There's times to knock things down, to demolish, 8 livnos, and there's times that we should be building something new, 8 lifkos. And this next verse 4, is kind of summing up in a way all the other things. Before were specific things like planting, destroying, healing, killing, But eight livkot, there's times to cry. Some of those times it is appropriate to cry. This is a very important lesson that it kind of took me a long time to learn in my life, and to the extent that I learn it, it's okay if something sad is happening, then the appropriate thing to do is to cry. If it's the appropriate emotion, even if it's not a pleasant emotion, or even if it's a terribly difficult or painful emotion, but that is a time for one to experience that emotion and cry. But there's also times to laugh and be happy. A sifod, there is time to mourn and to eulogize v'eser kod, and there's times to dance, to express either that extreme sadness or that extreme joy. Eis lahashlich avonim, there's a time to throw stones. This gives the idea of, trying to clear land, for example, and get rid of the stones and throw them to the side, or to clear a building that has fallen down, v'eis kinos avonim. But then there's times when we go around and gather stones because we want to put something together. Eis lachavok, there's time to hug and embrace and hold someone. V'eis l'rchok mechabek, but then there's times to distance oneself from such embraces and hugging. Eis levakesh, sometimes one should be seeking, one should be searching, one should be looking for things, whether it's physical things or answers to questions. V'eis la'abed, but then there's some times when we should be getting rid of things and sending them away because they're no longer productive, they're no longer necessary, and they're just causing more pain than necessary. Eis lishmor, there's times we should guard things, we should protect things from damage. V'eis lashlich, and sometimes we should discard things and get rid of them. Eis lekroa, there's time to tear. V'eis litvar, and sometimes we should sew things together, put things together. Eis lachashos, sometimes it's appropriate to be quiet and keep your mouth shut. V'eis ledaber, but sometimes one needs to stand up and speak. Eis lahov, there's time to give love. V'eis lisno, and there's time that's appropriate to hate. Eis milchama, there are times of war. V'eis shalom, and there are some times that are times of peace. So these are all important times. But now the question then becomes, okay, so I do the appropriate thing at the appropriate time, but what does that gain me? What does that get me for tomorrow, right? What do I do today that prepares us for tomorrow? When we're trying to find meaning in something, we try as hard as we can to find what there's meaning in looking to the future. I should build now in order to gain something later. But therefore, in verse 9, he asks the question, Ma yisron ha'oseh ba'asher hu amel. What gain is there for someone who does things, right, in that which he does, that which he works? When we do all this work, what then do we gain, right? I just told you we are supposed to experience that experience at the time when we experience it, but then what? What did we get? What do we get from it? And that is the question that we don't have an answer to, right? That's the question that he's asking. I don't know, right? Because any answer that's been attempted to be given doesn't seem to work, right? One would like to think that if I work now, then I gain something tomorrow. But that's not necessarily true, as we've said in these last several chapters. You might work now and not gain any benefit from your work, right? It might fail, you might die, right? Things happen, it just might not work, etc. Ra'isi es ha'inyan, I have seen, and this is verse 10, and this is interesting. Asher nasan Elohim livnei adam la'anos bo. Now, to translate this verse, I'm going to point out there's one word here that appears twice, and that is inyan and la'anos. That's ayin nun, the Hebrew word root. And usually that means the matter or the business. The ro'isi es inyan, I have seen the matter or the business with which God has given people la'anospo to be concerned with. I'm translating it according to one of the many translations that are out there. But I want to point out several translations and tell you the way I kind of understand this verse, right? When it says that a person should be la'anospo, that word anos, there's really three different interpretations in the classic commentaries. I'll mention the Evan Ezra, who understands it to be lehit asek, to busy oneself with, which is very close to the way I translated it. Rashi understands la'anos bo from the language of lehis naheg, how to act, how to do. In other words, I have seen how a person is supposed to act. But then the Mitsudos understands it as suffer, right? I have seen that which a person suffers through. But the way I kind of understand this is kind of translating it the way that Evan Ezra did, but I'm just going to add a little twist here, and that is that I have been telling us, right, that we need to consider, right, the present. The only thing that we know has meaning is what we are experiencing right now. So in verse 9, in the last verse, he asks, what do we gain when we do all this work? And then he answers, Ro'isi, I am telling you what matter it is. And that is, it is the thing which God has given to human beings to be busy with now, right now. That's exactly the lesson. Because I told you there's a time for A, there's a time for B, there's a time for C, there's a time for D. One thing I do know, and that is that right now, at this moment, each and every one of us, every single human being on this planet, at this very second is being presented with a challenge, with a choice. How do I deal with this at this moment? Do I do A? Do I do B? Do I get up and go to work? Do I stay in bed? Do I hit the gas? Do I hit the brake? Do I, so on and so forth. We are all, this is the thing which God has given human beings to deal with. Right now, what do I do? And then in verse 11, he continues, Et hakol asa yafeh be'ito. God has done everything proper for its time. This is one thing that's sure. You cannot argue with this. I don't know what's going to happen depending on what decisions I make, how that's going to affect my tomorrow, but I do know that right now I am experiencing this, and I need to experience it, feel it, understand it, process it, and decide how to act at this moment. However, gam het olam nosan bilibam. But God kind of made trouble for us, because not only what he gave us that's real, I just told you, that's this moment, but he also put in our hearts to worry about the world, to worry about everything around us. So when we're making those decisions, we're constantly thinking about what effect it's going to have on this world, right? Mibli asher lo yimtsoha adam et ha'ma'aseh. In such a situation that is such that the person cannot figure out what it is that he's supposed to do, asher asa Elohim me'erosh v'yatzov, because it is God who controls from beginning to end. It is God that controls the history. He knows all of the influences, the millions upon millions or billions, even trillions of influences that brought us to the very moment that we're in today. And he sees to the end the effects of the decisions and actions we take today all the way to the end. We don't see that. We don't know that. He put it in our heart to worry about it, to think about it, to wonder about it. But he did not give us the answer. So the bottom line is that A, it's proper now, but B, right, what effect will this have in the future? We don't know. We don't know. We have no idea. We don't know what the purpose and point of it all is. We don't know where it's heading. But we do know, only what we do know is this moment. Yodati. I know, he continues in verse 12, right? Ki ein tov bam. That there is no good in these things. In other words, these things, imagining trying to calculate all of the past and figuring out what to do for all the way into the future. Ki im l'smoach v'lasos tov b'chayav. But rather be happy and enjoy this moment. Enjoy the pleasures that we are being given. Experience it. And do good in your life. And make the right decision now. Do good. I know this is important. I know this is what I'm supposed to do right now. V'gam kol ha'adam sheyochal v'shasa. And if there is a man, right? And however, any man who does eat and drink, v'ra'ah tov b'chol amalo, and he does see good results from the work that he's done, Matas Elohimi, that would be a special gift of God. It does happen sometimes that some of us work and then we get a paycheck and then we use that paycheck to buy something that we like and we sit down and enjoy it and we get to see and feel and appreciate and experience the fruits of our labor. But that's a special gift that doesn't always happen. So we don't do the right thing because of what it's going to accomplish for tomorrow, because there's no way to know that it will. But we do the right thing now because it is right now. Because lasos tov b'chayav, we can be happy with what we have today, and we can do the right decision and do the right thing today. Yodati, he continues in verse 14, right? I know, this is another thing that I've learned, right? Ki chol asher yaseh ha'olam hu yeh la'olam. That everything that God has done, He is going to continue to do forever. In other words, the laws of nature are such that they will always be the way they are. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. Right? Allah ein lo hosif. We cannot add to the laws of nature. We cannot make up new natural laws. Umimenu ein legroa, and we can't take away natural laws that we don't like. Right? Right? It's going to be cold tomorrow. It's going to be hot tomorrow. Right? There's nothing we can do about that. Right? We just have to experience it and do the right thing given the situation that we're in. The laws of nature, the laws that govern the world around us, will continue the way they are, even though sometimes that means, God forbid, I may suffer terribly from an illness or something bad, right? Or I might gain something great. And another thing that God made, that we should be afraid of Him. What does this mean, afraid? This yira is actually, afraid is not the best translation, that we should have awe of Him. Why do we have awe of God, right? Because He made this grand universe that runs the way it runs in such a way that we cannot make sense of it, right? This makes us in awe. If we had control over the laws of nature and we can bend things to the way we want them simply because we want them that way, we would have no awe and reverence for nature itself. We would have no awe and reverence for the creator of all that nature. We would feel nothing for Him. We have the control, but we don't. And because we don't, right, we have awe of God. But also, I'm just reminding us that we mentioned before that it is God who put this desire to know more in us, but He never gave us the answer. He never explained it to us. But because of that desire, we look at the world around us and realize just how we don't understand and don't control the world, and thus we develop awe of God. Masha haya kvar, that which has been, kvar hu, has already been, v'asher liyos, and that which will be in the future, kvar yo, has also already happened. The cycle of nature continues round and round. V'Elohim, however, God yivakesh nirdof. And this is a very difficult verse to translate, because literally it means God searches out that which is being chased, or that which is being pursued. We have to understand this verse in context. And of course, many commentators understand this in different ways. But the way I'm going to understand it is similar to the way Evan Ezra understands it, that God pursues, and the way the Koran translation of Tanakh translates it, God pursues the fleeting moment. But I want to elaborate a little bit more. What is this nirdaf? What is this that God can seek out, right? The nirdaf is, and some of the other mafarshim, like the Ralbag, mention, the other commentaries mention that nirdaf is that which is being chased, that which bakesh shalom v'radfeu. We also see those same two words we search out, we seek out peace, and we chase after it, right? So we also see those same words of yivakesh and nirdaf, the same two roots. So the nirdaf is that which we seek. And what is it that which we seek in the context of the chapter we're learning? We seek to know the meaning, know the purpose, why it is that we work today. Where are we going? Where are we heading? Right? And in the context of this verse, what this means is, and I'm suggesting this based on the commentaries that I mentioned, but adding a little bit of understanding of my own, and that is that which was always was, and that which will be has been already, and it is only God that can seek out the true meaning of that moment. It is only God that knows it. We can't really know what the point is, right? Only God can know what the point is, right? So that was, I believe, especially based on the context, is the true meaning of this. V'odra isi taras hashemesh. This is verse 16. He takes a little change of direction here, but there's something else that I've seen in this world that we live in. Something else that I've noticed over the years, and I think that most of us would agree with this observation, and that is that if one wants to know what is truly evil and what is truly good, where does one look? Where does one find that? One finds that Mekom HaMishpat, in the place of justice, in other words, the place that is supposed to be administering true justice, Shama HaResha, that's the place where we find the most evil happening. There's nothing worse than a corrupt judge. There's nothing worse than a corrupt system of justice. We know this obviously from many places throughout the Torah, and we find this in our own life experiences. Nothing is worse. We know injustices will happen in any society, but when the system set up to administer justice itself is corrupt, that's the worst. U'makom hatzedek, and even more so, in the place where righteousness is to be found. Tzedek here really means the kind of righteousness that occurs when one goes into court and comes out being vindicated, right? But it also means, doing the right thing at the right time, right? The place where one is supposed to make the right choice, Shama HaRasha, that is where we will find the most evil. Think about, when a person abuses his or her authority in a position of authority for their own personal gain, the very place where we're depending on that person to do tzedek, to do something good, to do something proper for society, that is where we find the worst rishos, the worst evil. So Amarti ani belibi, verse 17, so I noticed this in the world, tachas hashemesh, right? Verse 16, he said, this is what I see underneath the sun in the world that I live in. So then Amarti ani belibi, I said to myself in my heart, I thought, et hatzadik v'et harasha yishbotu Elohim. God also is meting out justice, and he's meting out justice both to the righteous and to the rasha, right? All of us live in this world that he created, and all of us have to deal with the consequences of the decisions that he made, the way he made this world and how this world runs. We all suffer those consequences, whether or not we make the right decisions or the wrong decisions, whether or not we are a tzaddik, a righteous person, or a rasha, an evil person, right? All of us suffer because of our deeds. We all live in this world, and when it's hot outside, it's hot for all of us. When it's cold for all of us. When the economy goes down, the economy goes down for everyone. When there's a thunderstorm, we all live in the thunderstorm. Ki eis l'chol chayfetz ve'al kol ha'ma'aseh sham. For there is a time for everything, right? The world goes through the times that we mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, and all of us need to experience those times, right? It may not make sense in our own system of justice that we have in our brain, but this is the way it is, right? V'al kol ha'ma'aseh sham. And everything that is done there, right? This there seems to me to be referring to up in the heavens, right? Right, and also, or it could mean everything that's being done in the world in this universe. But the bottom is everything that happens in this world, everything that occurs, right? There is a time for it, and all of us need to experience it. That's just the way the world works. So then, another observation Solomon makes is one might think that which a person, that people are special, people have a special mission in this world. Making a human being somehow better than an animal gives us a sense, folks, we make choices, we decide to do good things, we can affect this world and make it better. But then he says, Amarti ani belibi, I said when I really looked around and I thought, al divras b'nei adam, on the separation between human beings, right? Livaram ha-Elohim, right? To separate them from godly beings. V'liros shehem behema hemalahem. And I saw and I noticed that actually they're really just animals, right? We like to think of ourselves as being like gods, but in truth, we're not. We are subject to the same natural forces that all animals that live on this planet are subject to. Verse 19, Ki mikre v'nei ha'adam u'mikre ha'behema u'mikre echad lahem. If you look at those things that happen to humans and the things that happen to animals, you will find that the same thing happens to all of us. Kemoseh, kain moseh, just like animals die, we die. Baruch echad l'kol, we all have the same spirit. We all have life. We all seek to better our lives. We all try to avoid danger. Umosar ha'adam min ha'behema ayin, and that which a human being has that makes him greater than an animal is like nothing. Ki hakol havel, because everything is just like breath, right? Remember, we're translating havel as breath. It comes, it goes, as opposed to vanity. It comes and it goes. It's important, right? Breath, but you breathe it in, you breathe it out. It comes, it goes. And human beings, just like animals, we come and we go. There is, and you might think, oh, well, humans are different because we have some kind of special mission, some kind of special thing we're going to achieve, and some kind of special thing we're going to do. And we have all kinds of, we have a brain and we think and we're intelligent and so on. But the bottom line is, with all that intelligence, we still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We still don't really know or understand why we do what we do. Kohelet is teaching us, of course, we are supposed to do the right thing and make the right decisions and the right choices about now. But do we really ever know about tomorrow? Do we really ever know where we are heading? No, we don't, right? Many religions try to teach us that, yes, you know, if you do this, this, and this, if you believe this, 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 if you say this, 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 then you'll be okay tomorrow. But in truth, and this is, Maimonides reminds us of this in the Guide for the Perplexed all the time, many times, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I can't prove to you that if I live a good life, I'm going to have some kind of benefit or reward down the road. I can't prove that to you. I can teach you that. I can make arguments to describe why that is. I can go through all kinds of philosophical gymnastics and arguments, and I can teach you it as a belief system. The Torah can even teach us that, which it does, that there is a benefit, there is a gain to something, somewhere, right? Right? To living the proper life, because the world is heading towards a direction. But there's no way that I can prove that, and there's none of us ever see that on a daily basis. We don't see what's going to happen. So there's nothing wrong with believing it. In fact, we should. But I can't prove that to you, right? And when I look at the world around us, all that I do see is that we live lives just like animals do. We live and we die. Hakol holech al makom echad, verse 20. Everything ends up in the same place. Hakol hayamin afar, everything came from earth, everything came from the elements. Hakol shavel afar, everything returns to those same elements. Mi yodea ruach bnei adam, who can know for sure, who can say for sure that human beings, ha'olahi lamala, that after death we go up somewhere special. V'ruach habehembo, but the spirit of the animal, hayaredes hilamatal aretz, that goes back to the earth and doesn't exist anymore. Who can say such a thing? Now, it's very important to remember, Kohelet is not saying that it's not true. He's just saying that no one can prove it. No one can see it. And that's crucial, because we can't. Like I said, this is something that Maimonides says many times. Maimonides tells us, I can't prove to you that these things are true. I can tell you that they might be true. I can tell you why I think they're probably true, but I cannot prove it to you. And Kohelet is reminding us there's a reason why Kohelet teaches us in this chapter that God put in us the desire to know, the desire to understand, but the inability to actually know or understand these things and ideas, right? So that we should live our lives in awe of the Creator, in awe of the nature and the rules and the world and the universe that we live in. Vra'isi. So after all of these lessons, I saw ki ein tov, there is nothing better me'asher yismach adam b'masav. A person should be happy in the actions that he does, right? Whenever we do something, every day we should think and feel, this is important, this is special, I will enjoy this moment for what it is, right? Kihu chalko, because this is a portion that we have in this world that we know that is real, that we are actually touching and feeling, and there is no doubt that I am experiencing at this very moment the joy, for example, of giving this podcast and teaching you. Ki mi yavienu liros b'meshi yacharav. For who can bring, in other words, no one is around that can show me what's going to be after I'm gone, or after this moment is gone. Nobody can tell me what's going to happen later this afternoon. Nobody can tell me with certainty where my life is going to head, where this world is going to head, where this planet is going to head. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that I am enjoying teaching this podcast, and I'm enjoying everyone who is listening and learning and participating in this wonderful podcast. So this includes chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes of Kohelet. Thank you so much for for joining me. Thank you so much for learning with me. Looking forward to studying chapter 4 together and the rest of this wonderful book of Kohelet. Have a wonderful day.